Welcome back to Meditation and Coloring. This is week 8. Please go ahead, grab your coloring book, whatever utensils you're using to color with, a drink of water, a snack. If it's in the morning, grab a cup of coffee. If it's at night, enjoy your warm cup of tea. We took a break last week due to current events, and I am going to do a voiceover for this week and next week because what was originally recorded with the coloring doesn't fit with the current events that we're dealing with. So, during today's coloring session, and during the live chat, I'm going to invite everyone to take advantage of the poll that is up, because I have gotten a lot of messages via the Instagram and via the Facebook page of people asking for help. A lot of people have signed up for one-on-one sessions in traumahealingprevention.org. And these sessions are offered to people for times like this. The biggest thing that I'm hearing from people is their frustration with lack of access to mental health services, their frustration with lack of action from elected representatives, and mostly I'm hearing a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, and a lot of anger. Full disclosure, at this point in time, Trauma Healing and Prevention Services is about education and peer-to-peer support. We offer workshops, continuing to offer doula services either online for people who are too far away, in person for those in the immediate vicinity. We will help you find the resources you need in the community that you're in if they're available. And we will help find workarounds when the resources that you need are not available. One of the great questions that I got in is, what is the main thing that you are hoping people can take away from their time engaging with THPS? And I am guessing that that is with Trauma Healing Prevention Services as a whole, and not just the YouTube app. And the biggest thing that I hope people can take away is the amount of control we actually have in the world. We can't control anyone else's actions or choices. The only person we can control is ourselves. The amazing part of coming to terms with the fact that we can't control anyone else, we can't control their behavior, we can't control their choices, is once we realize the only person we can control is ourself, then we have actually empowered ourselves to make huge changes. So if I spend a lot of time trying to control, we're going to say, my child's behavior, I'm expending a lot of energy. I'm probably running into a lot of resistance because they don't really want to change. Like, why should they change? Nagging isn't going to get them to change. Punishment isn't going to get them to change. The only way they're going to want to change is if things happen that empower their own sense of security to want to make changes. So the best thing I can do for myself and for my child who I'm trying to help is to change my own behavior. So if I start with going to bed every night finding something that I'm going to be grateful for, then that's going to help me get a better night's sleep. If the next morning, before I even get out of bed, I do some micro movements so that my body feels better as I get out of bed, that's going to help me be in a better mood for the rest of the day. Because I'm in a better mood, I'm going to have more patience, and my ability to respond instead of react is going to be much higher. And so each little change I make in me, the way that plays out is when our kids see us happier, when our kids see us able to respond, they trust us to come and talk to us about what's bothering them, and they trust us to not judge them. They trust us to be able to support them. If we have the ability to maintain our own energy and regulate ourselves, then our children will start to look to us for how to regulate that within themselves. And at that point, they'll start being ready to change their behavior. Now, in the larger community, the way that works is when we see something that we don't like, let's take crime, for example, in our immediately surrounding community. We can get really upset about the fact that people are, making graffiti or are breaking windows to get into stores to steal things. We can expend a lot of energy trying to change laws, trying to get more police officers out there. None of that's actually going to change what the root problem is. However, once we're able to recognize where we respond within ourselves, where our own trauma is, and we start to address that, then that changes the way we interact with our community. And instead of getting angry that someone broke into a store and negatively impacted the store, we will start to see where inequality is playing a role, and we'll start to be willing to make changes on our own. Like making sure that the people who are not housed, who are sleeping rough in our community, have enough water. A lot of them did not during the pandemic. Their access to resources was significantly negatively impacted. So making sure that people have safe, clean drinking water, and have safe food, and have a safe place to sleep at night. When those needs start getting met, then we see crime starting to come down in our neighborhoods. So I guess the biggest takeaway I hope that people will get from any time that they engage with trauma healing and prevention services is the idea that we do have the ability to change things as long as we're willing to start with ourselves and do a little bit of work. Another thing that I think that gets overlooked is how much we contribute to mutual aid. Do we have a mutual aid in our community? If we don't, what do we need to do to get one started? So that's something that THPS can help with as well. If anybody has any questions or has any feedback or requests for content on the YouTube channel, you can use the traumahealingprevention.org. So it's written out, TRAUMAHEALINGPREVENTION.org. There is a contact us, and you can click on that and send anything that you don't want out in the public domain. You can also use that site to schedule your own appointment. We have everything from 15-minute Q&As up to 90-minute and 2-hour debriefings that can be done in community groups. We recommend that you start out with a Q&A first to get all the details of what we can and cannot do, what trauma healing and prevention services is and is not. And then after that 15-minute Q&A, we can identify what is the best route forwards. The easiest and simplest thing, write in the comments. Eventually, we'll have enough subscribers that we can do live feeds. And when we do live feeds, people will be able to ask questions in the live chat, and I'll answer the questions right there. And I can control on YouTube whether or not that live chat is visible later. So if we're answering questions about mental health and things, I will make it so the live chat can't be seen once the live chat is over, and that way you'll have anonymity beyond the live chat that happened. But I encourage people to ask any questions that you have. If you're having that question and you're scared to ask it, trust me, there's at least a dozen other people who are also having that question who are also scared to ask it. We have over 100 views of most of the videos. We only have 5 or 6 people who like them, and maybe half that who interact in the chat. So if you want to help trauma healing and prevention services to get to the point that we can have a live stream with live interaction where people watching the video can text, can type out their questions in the live chat, and I answer straight from the live chat, then the things that people can do is they can like, each video as it comes out. They can become a subscriber if you're not already a subscriber. Share the videos. The more shares videos have, apparently YouTube really likes that. So if you show up for the live premieres on Monday nights, then as we get more people showing up for live premieres, the sooner YouTube will make it so that we can do live streams. I'm always open to questions. I always look forwards to feedback and requests for content. That's how meditation and coloring came about. Somebody asked for something to help them with meditating because they could not do meditation while sitting still. People in the West, we are taught with the more trauma that we have to distract ourselves more. And the more we distract ourselves, the harder it is to identify what's the root that we need to address and how do we heal it. So if we start with something like meditating while we're walking in the woods, or for people who don't have that opportunity right now, meditating while we're coloring, meditating while we're gardening in our home, meditating while we're taking care of a fish tank, meditating while we're washing the dishes, all of those things can help us train a new muscle in our brain to help us take charge of our own mental and physical health, because they are intertwined. You don't get one without the other. Okay, here is a great question that I was asked. Why do I think that this type of approach to healing is so effective? 1, personal experience. 2, loads of research. 3, having had the privilege of being able to work with Indigenous people who were still living in very close relationship with the land back in the early 90s when I was down in Mexico, and spent a little time in Guatemala and Belize. And to see that the people who had the most goods, so to speak, the people that by U.S. standards would be considered, rich and well-to-do, were some of the most miserably unhappy people that I had met. And people who in the U.S. We have a tendency to discount were some of the happiest, healthiest children that I've ever had the privilege to interact with. And one of the things that really impacted me while I was in Mexico and changed who I am fundamentally as a person and changed fundamentally how I would raise my children was staying on a very small ranchero. There was 5 generations living there, extended family. They all worked the land together, and they had a pile of disposable diapers. Like, that was the only real trash that they had. They recycled everything. The few things that couldn't be recycled would get reused. Everything would get reused until it couldn't be reused anymore. And they really didn't have any trash anywhere. Like, it was very, very clean, except for this pile of disposable diapers that was probably about twice as tall as I was. And I didn't see any children there under the age of 5. And so I asked one of the aunties, what it was. My Spanish at that point was still pretty bad, so I'm not sure exactly what question was heard, but the answer that was given was that the youngest on the ranchero was 5. That when they had tried to buy more cloth for diapers like they had with the other, for multiple generations, they couldn't afford the cloth anymore. It was, the disposable diapers were given to them, via a program. And so they had used those disposable diapers, but they couldn't find anything to reuse the diapers for. And when they tried to burn them like they would burn other paper trash, they said that they would use the paper to start their fires and things, but they couldn't use it for any fires inside because it made the grandmother sick. And when they tried to burn it outside, it made the donkey very, very ill. So they decided that they couldn't burn it, and it probably wasn't safe to put in the ground either. So that pile had been sitting there for almost 5 years since they had quit using the disposable diapers. I did not understand if they used the diapers until the child was 3 or if they had used the diapers for 3 children. So my understanding there could be wrong, and that pile could have just been sitting there for 2 years, but it wasn't going anywhere. As for me, I had some pretty intense traumas. I'm not a big fan of the adverse childhood experience thing that is used, because the way it is currently written, it deliberately does not cover some of the worst things that children can have to live through. And a lot of that is because, at least here in the United States, if we don't acknowledge that there's a problem, then we don't have to pay money to deal with the problem. We can pretend that it doesn't exist. We've done that ever since the Carlisle boarding school was opened, the first official residential boarding school, but there were several before the Carlisle school that were smaller and run by various religious institutions. If we pretend that something isn't a problem, then we don't have to address the problem. We can pretend it doesn't exist. And so the way this country has framed a lot of things is very much about victim blaming. So we have this concept of crime being a problem in the US, and we police certain communities, saying that that community has a higher crime problem. And then, because that's where the police are and picking people up, the data of who's in prison supports the propaganda of what we're saying. But if we get down into the reality of things, we don't have an equal representation for the crime that's actually happening around us. So we need to ask ourselves, why are some people imprisoned and other people are not? Why are sentences so different? Why do only some communities have to worry about the school to prison pipeline and other communities do not have to worry about the school to prison pipeline? Why did our country have this massive media campaign about critical race theory when critical race theory is only taught to law students? Like, you have to get all the way K through 12, finish your first 4 years of college, and then go in for a higher degree than just your bachelor's before you even have access to the class of critical race theory. So why did we have parents jam-packing school board meetings saying that they didn't want their children taught critical race theory, like it wasn't even an option at that age group? Those are all examples of people who have trauma that they haven't acknowledged, and so because they haven't acknowledged it, they haven't addressed it, they haven't learned healthy coping skills to deal with it. And yes, hope is a coping skill. And I'm hoping that trauma healing and prevention services can help people learn the skills that most of us did not have opportunities to learn as we were growing up. And then if we can learn these skills as the adults, we can teach these skills to our kids. And if we teach these skills to our kids, then our kids will grow up and our grandkids will grow up. And they won't allow elected representatives to capitalize off of people's trauma. And I suspect for some people, I think all of us want our kids and our grandkids to be healthier than we are. And that's our desire above everything else. We want the people we interact with to be healthier. And then when it comes time to actually do the things so our children, our grandchildren, and the people around us can be healthier, I think we get scared. And the scarcity mindset that we've been taught to operate within will kick in again. And I'm hoping that trauma healing and prevention services can help people develop skills so that we don't go back to that default, so that we start moving past that, so we start moving forwards into a healthier society. So my personal experience about seeing, you know, that large pile of diapers down in Mexico, it made me very cognizant of how things as small as how do we take care of our children can have decades and even centuries worth of impact. When I got back into the States from Mexico, I got involved with counseling and therapy. And I've had some amazing counselors and therapists. And I have had others who were not cognizant of their own ableism, of their own bias against various communities. And because they weren't aware of their bias, they weren't aware of the racism that they brought into the room each time that we met. They weren't aware of the ableism that they brought in, or the ageism that they brought in, or the classism that they brought in. They weren't aware how their private beliefs on LGBTQ individuals impacted the way that they frequently ended up doing more harm than help with not just me, but also other clients. The difference was I had already gone to school for psychology. I had already done a lot of training to be able to support other people through traumatic experiences. And so I had worked in the ER. And had a lot of firsthand experience with how physiological trauma responses can interact with physical healing and long-term how they impact our mental thought processes and how they impact the way we interact with other people. And most of us are not even aware of how that happens. And so I went back to school, expanded my psychology degree to include a specialty within race and gender, which meant I also got a sociology degree. And I worked with therapists to develop things that can be taught to anyone, that can be shared with anyone, that is not required for someone to have a specific license. So someone can come in and learn how to do W.A.V.E, which we have several videos on W.A.V.E on the channel. And we perfected it based on my utilizing it. I probably do W.A.V.E 30 to 40 times a day. It's how I figure out what needs to be addressed, because if I don't know what's going on in the media, I'm not a very good support person if I suddenly get, say, 3 appointments in a week from people who just recently were able to get out of the Ukraine. So when I'm meeting with people, I need to be cognizant of what's happening around the globe. And for me to be able to get through the news and not have it negatively impact my own health, I have to do a lot of W.A.V.E. And then I have to do a lot of processing and meditating. And if I'm going to help and support other people, then I have a responsibility to maintain my ability to respond to whatever they share with me. And that means breathing through whatever emotions pop up, acknowledging that those emotions are there, exhaling and letting them go so that I can stay present in the moment for the person that I'm in a session with, or that I'm talking through in real life. I use these skills when I am present at births. Better than 90% of the birthing parents that I work with now are also trauma survivors. And so when they get far enough along in labor before delivery, typically at a cellular level, something in their body will remember what happened to them, even if they have blocked that out of their conscious memory. And so at that point, we utilize everything that I teach. Eventually, everything theoretically will be available in videos. We're not there yet. But anybody who schedules an appointment with me has the opportunity to learn every skill that I have learned. And they have the opportunity to hear how I have applied that and how I have found that it worked. And also to hear, the times that it didn't work. The situations that people have run into. A tool that works really well today may not work very well tomorrow, or it might not be the right time to use that tool. I equate it to woodworking. Hammers are great if you have a nail. They will strip the bejesus out of a screw. So it's better to use a screwdriver at that point. You can certainly hammer the end of a piece of wood to make it shorter. It's a lot easier to measure twice, mark it, and cut once with the correct tool. My goal is to give everybody the opportunity to build the tools that they need, and also to allow them a safe place to come back to ask help developing more tools. All of us are at the beginning of the rest of our journey. None of us have the exact same muscles developed in the exact same way. The reality is a community is only as healthy as each individual in the community. And our communities have grown exponentially thanks to the internet. We have communities within larger communities within larger communities that are within a global community. It's a lot easier to address the fears and the concerns that we have within ourselves so that we can find ways to show up for other people who perhaps have access to even fewer resources than we do, and help them. If everyone embraced the idea that we're supposed to lift each other up and not step on each other's heads to get somewhere, then each individual will be healthier and do better. Humanity will do better. The animals who are forced to live in relationship with us because we just expand and take up space everywhere, every single one of those plants and animals will benefit if each one of us becomes more aware of how we impact the world around us. We over anything else except for us, but by controlling what we do, by controlling how we do it, by choosing the energy we carry through the day with us, we increase the chances of having a positive impact on the world around us. So if you haven't yet, look in the live chat for the poll option if you're here on Monday night or possibly Tuesday morning for people in the East. On this fine 21st of March, 22nd of March if you're further east than we are. Look at the poll, answer the poll questions. If you don't want to answer the poll questions, or if you missed the live premiere, then please go into the chat and write out any questions you have. Comment what you liked, what you didn't like. Comment any requests you have for future videos. And if something that I said in here generated a strong physiological response on your part, please feel free to go to the link below. Click on the link for trauma healing and prevention services, and schedule a meeting if you have questions. If you just need somebody to hear you out, schedule a meeting. That's what I'm here for. If you need more than what my services can provide, I'll help you find something that meets your needs. But ultimately, my goal is that enough of us can heal that a channel like this isn't needed anymore. That it can just focus on fun things and that's it. But for right now, it's focused on building muscles of compassion, building muscles for problem solving, building muscles for mental health, building muscles for the ability to respond, building muscles around accountability, and just building muscles so that we can be better human beings. So we can build better human beings.